Yeah.
Curious what these two numbers are.
Negative
Done.
numbers.
Who would that be? I know
Okay.
that much, but any more checks that I could have another.
All right, let's open the meeting with a pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is a special meeting. It's not a regular meeting of the village board. We have two public hearings on the agenda. The first public hearing is for the clarification amendment on our animal control law. And the second is the fourth public hearing on our zoning law. So we are going to spend 15 minutes in each public hearing and go over or listen to any questions or concerns you might have on either of those topics. I believe that there were copies of the proposed clarification amendment for everyone to take a look at. And what we did here was, because of the vote that took place in March and the other information that came together on the animal control law, I spoke a couple of times with our attorney just for clarification purposes. So this doesn't change anything in the law. It clarifies what the board interprets the law to be. So now we have it in writing if this passes tonight. Okay. So what it says is the article shall be known as Farm Animals Law. Again, it's a clarification amendment. The purpose of this article is to clarify the decision made by the Village Board of Trustees at the March 10th, 2021 meeting, not to proceed, or no to proceed or not to proceed with the development of a law that would allow possession of farm animals in the Village of Bergen. No person shall own, harbor, keep, or maintain farm animals within the Village of Bergen. Farm animals shall include, but shall not be limited to, free-range chickens, hens and roosters, goats, cattle, horses, donkeys, mules, ponies, fowl, waterfowl, peacocks, turkeys, swine, sheep, llamas, ostriches, emus, and poisonous snakes. A violation of this article is hereby declared to be an offense punishable by a fine not exceeding $100. Each week's violation shall constitute a separate additional violation. Any pre-existing non-conforming farming operations within the village would be exempt. So we'll open the public hearing on the clarification amendment to local law number 4.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are there any pre-existing non-conforming farm operations within the village?
Yes, the main farm up at the corner, they've been in the village since before zoning laws existed, so we wanted to make sure that their horses and sheep and whatnot were able to stay.
Okay.
Are we still fighting the chicken man with the attorneys, or has that been concluded?
It has not been concluded yet.
Quick question, is there any, has there been any consideration as to having an exemption for students who are participating in 4-H that might be raising a single animal, you know, for competition purposes or education?
Not within this. Not within
Okay.
this.
And could I ask, so what is the spirit of this law? I know there's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of things that have happened over the past year and year and a half really on this matter, but is the purpose of, did this law really originate in any written complaints to the village? I just want to make sure that we summarize for people who weren't really present through the whole process.
This is not a law in itself, it's an amendment to the local law that already exists. So I guess, can you restate your question? I'm not clear.
Sure, so my question is, what is really the spirit of this clarification? Was this originally originating in written complaints to the village? Or were they
Well,
like just calls?
The whole process originated by written complaints. There were 2 written complaints that needed to be followed through with by our code enforcement officer. And you know the history of this as well as anyone. At that point, a group of folks came in and wanted to discuss creating, the possibility of creating a law that would allow chickens in the village. There was a lot of discussion about what the law actually said, and we went back and forth with that, but it had always been the opinion of the village that chickens were not allowed to be raised in the village. So we put a moratorium on keeping of chickens until we came to a conclusion as to what happened. The group was working on a proposed law which would accommodate the raising of chickens in the village. We went through that process. During that time, there were a lot of inquiries about this situation, both for and against. And both of those groups were supported by accommodating their questions and doing research and all of that for both sides. In the end, after having public meetings and so on about that, in the end, the board took a vote as to whether or not we should move forward with establishing a law that would allow the raising of chickens in the village, and that was turned down. So that led to, let's make sure we have clarification that accommodates what the feeling of the board and the code enforcement officers have been all along. So that's where that comes from.
Okay, thank you for that summary. I mean, I know that I've been very involved, but I know we probably have a couple people here who hadn't been. So just for their benefit.
Sure.
Now, there were only 2 written complaints. Now, are those available for people to actually read? Just because I was curious to those original complaints, were they actually followed up upon by the
Yes.
zoning enforcement officer?
Yes.
Okay, and yeah, the records of I was aware that there were not necessarily votes, but there was some sort of a survey taken back when that decision was made months ago. Are the results of that public so that people can actually see what the tallies were and what the comments
The
were?
code enforcement officer has those.
Okay, is there any reason they're not publicly accessible online?
Anybody that's asked about them has been given the information.
Okay, just because there's a lot of other documents for the village that are available online. It'd be nice to start seeing more of that, just be by default, putting them made publicly available without having to ask for them would be great.
I know that someone brought up a question of, or the request that we speak louder, so I'm hoping that you can hear. And if you can't, just, you know. My teacher was
Was the animal control law updated in 2018?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why it says the 2018 up there, because it's updated.
Mhm.
Now that I reread this, one more question. How do you plan to enforce it? Just because this is a law, this isn't a zoning, thing necessarily. So what's the intention behind how this could be enforced?
If someone is in violation of a local law, the code enforcement officer will let that person know and go through the process. If that continues, then the violation would be punishable by a fine. And that discussion would take place between the code enforcement officer and the person who is in violation of the law. And he would do that according to what the rules and regulations are of the code enforcement officer.
Sure, that makes sense given the resources we have. Again, though, the zoning and code enforcement officer is just that. He's not a police officer, so to speak.
A local law can be enforced by the village and our attorney.
Okay.
Mhm. I would hope that if someone is in violation of the local law, that they would think about remaining in violation or not. But that's certainly not up to me.
No, I understand. I specifically asked because I heard mention of someone who's a chicken owner that had an attorney that was pursuing something against the village.
We don't discuss legal issues in open floor.
Okay, sure.
Is this something that has to be filed with the Department of State?
Any local laws.
If there are no further questions or comments, we will close the public hearing on Village of Bergen proposed clarification amendment to local law number 4 of 2018, the animal control law. Courtney, were there any written comments that you need to include? All right, and we will move on to the second public hearing for tonight, and that is the Village of Bergen enacting a new village zoning code and zoning map, replacing the existing zoning code and zoning map. So we will open the public hearing at 7:40. 6:46. Not 7, 6:46. I know that most of you were here for the last one when I read the resolution through. If you'd like me to do that again, I certainly will do that. The resolution for the zoning code and zoning map.
I just have a question on section 6. It seems like that sentence is a circle and I can't figure out what it means under validity.
What page are you on?
The second page.
Second, sorry.
No,
Oh, sorry, in the summary? Yeah.
the local law.
Yeah, that's kind of strange, isn't it? The invalidity of any provision of this local law shall not affect the validity of any other provision of this local law that can be given effect without such invalid provision. That's a good question.
I think what it's saying is that just if one section of the law is proven to be invalid, it doesn't affect the
Doesn't-
validity
of the rest of the
it?
document.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
That's what I would say,
Okay.
yes, yes. Would be nice if it was written in English, but that's not always the case.
You guys are probably tired of hearing me say this, but I'm gonna encourage all board members to vote, affirmatively for this. It's my opinion as a village resident.
And just for everyone's benefit, the county planning board totally approved our document for the second time, so.
want to bring forth, days after our last meeting, I received information from the state, technical bulletin from the building codes and Uniform Fire Prevention Building Code. And it's so up to date, Kathy Huckel's name's on it for governor. And I've been numerous times bringing up, I know, this right of entry. And these, this Uniform Building Code is what the village goes by. It was adopted as a local law in 2007, local law 2007. The village adopted this. This is what we go by. These are the rules and regulations we go by. I gave a copy of this to all the board members. I want to read two of the little, as far as right of entry. Local governments must remember that under the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, property owners enjoy certain protections from searches or inspections by government authorities. Except in certain limited circumstances, public officials may not enter private premises in the absence of consent or a search warrant. Okay, that's number one. These are the rules and regulations we go by. Number two, in general, in the absence of an emergency, a local government or a person acting on behalf of a local government should not conduct an inspection of private property without, number one, the voluntary, non-coerced consent of the owner, or two, a warrant. I've been trying to get this with consent into the language of this proposed document. It's in our existing document, but for some reason, I can't get it.
Joe, is there any other communities that have what you're referring to in their zoning codes?
The majority of them have this in it, yes.
So if that's the document that we've already agreed to go by, why do we have to have the language somewhere else? Can't we just,
Because it's not in it's not in the proposed document.
but that, we've already agreed we're going by that language. So why does it have to be duplicated?
Because it's misleading. If the general public reads our zoning, it says he's got the right to enter any building or structure.
No, Joe, excuse me. We've gone over this, and I understand your concern, and I appreciate all the time that you put into that. That document tells us exactly what we need to do in different types of inspections. Our zoning law refers to land use, and when anyone gets a permit, the permit gives permission for the code enforcement officer to do an inspection in order for the property owner to get a certificate of occupancy. That is above and beyond what needs to be in our local code, or excuse me, zoning law. Both the code enforcement officer and the planning board chairperson have spoken to you at length on this and given you all the information that they had. Both of the consultants, one of whom is a nationally awarded consultant in zoning, also explained that that is not necessary in our zoning law. It's already there, we've already adopted it, so it doesn't need to be part of our zoning law. So, I understand that you have a disagreement with that. Our attorneys, our consultants, our code enforcement officers, and our planning board chair all agree that this is not necessary in our zoning law. Well, I don't know where else to explain it to you. I don't know how else to do that. But everyone in the know about this, anyone who has certification in this field, has told us that our document does not need that language.
I don't agree.
And you have every right not
I
to.
don't agree. I think the residents, I've had residents come to me, point this out to me from day one, saying this isn't right. That's why I brought it in the very first, when this first started.
I understand that. I understand that.
I think it's
But we need to
misleading.
go with what the authorities and what those people who are professional folks in this field have told us.
Who are these professional people?
Joe, both the consultants,
They said to get our village attorney to look at it, because they weren't experts in this field.
and our attorney is fine with our document. Our planning board in the county is fine with our document.
If I might please make a comment.
Certainly.
Putting what is necessary versus what's a good idea are often very different things. It might be inconvenient for the village to include that language at this point, but it might also help avoid potential civil rights lawsuits against the village should something happen where there is someone coerced into giving that permission.
I think that would happen anyway, whether this language was in there or not. You'd still have that lawsuit.
Could potentially, but why not be more specific as to what, people are allowed to do?
As you become more specific, you are narrowing the intent of what exists. It may sound like a good idea, but it really doesn't. It will be tying hands more, and then we'll be having more dissension over there. The other point I would like to make is that we live in a village that has, I've been here for 50 years, and to the best of my knowledge, the people living here have steadfastly complied with the law. There may always be an exception where somebody just doesn't understand something and takes it to the next level, but I doubt that that's happened. I don't know, I would have to say minimum number of times in the time that I've lived here. We've gone through this entire process. The laws are updated regularly to make sure that, again, they are in compliance with the county, with the state, and what is the best interests of the residents of the village. And you can only go so far in trying to accommodate people who at some point, and you'll have to, excuse me, because I'm not saying this to you,
Oh, it's okay.
but there are people who will nitpick no matter what exists. And you can't, you just can't. They have to understand that this is what the law, we don't always have to like it. I don't like everything. But it is our village, it's our law, and this is what we live by, and this is what we all have to stay in union with and reinforce one another to keep the goodness of this village going. And if we're going to have people who are continuing, again, and I'm gonna use the word nitpick because some of that is amounting to just some of it, to that area, then you're going to be creating dissension that's not necessary and should not exist. So it boils down to everybody doesn't like what happens. We can agree to disagree, but we all should respect what the law is and abide by it and find maybe a constructive way to make it better instead of creating more dissension. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that insight, especially having lived here for 50 years. I definitely appreciate, your insight on that. At the same time, you're making an argument about tight construction versus loose construction, which our Supreme Court and our founding fathers were fighting against, and I doubt we'll ever stop, arguing about loose versus tight construction of legal documents. At the same time, this amounts to Fourth Amendment concerns that, citizens have. It's not just me, it's not just Joe, other people have had them. And I just feel like we lose nothing by being overly specific. It does mean that people can nitpick the law a little bit, but that's what our legal system is for. It's what makes it great, our endless system of appeals.
There are reasons, there are certain times when, yes, we should be having these appeals, and other times there's not.
Yes,
And
Robin.
it's, I'm sorry, Robin, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just, this is zoning law. So if I'm asking for any kind of building permit and I'm giving permission, the whole point of a building permit is to change your occupancy. And in order to get that certificate of occupancy, I want an inspection as a homeowner. I don't see that as a Fourth Amendment issue. It's, I'm asking you for something, I'm giving you permission to come and inspect it so that I can get what I want from you. That's a transaction.
And that's the job of the code enforcement officer, to do exactly that.
I
And that's
don't
what this
think it's a
document
Fourth
is for.
Amendment issue.
If I might clarify my concern, my concern is more over a matter of enforcement than it is over, just believing that people will always do the right thing. I've had the current zoning enforcement officer come to my house with police officers to demand to inspect my property with less than 24 hours notice in the past. So I believe the purpose of the law is to protect both the citizens and the village. It shouldn't be that one-sided that it only protects the village. So really, that's part of my concern, is real life experience that I've currently had with those that are currently in office and appointed. And, frankly, it could, if I might finish, please, I'll be brief.
Certainly.
Really, we have to plan for the future and who might be holding these positions in the future, not who has them currently. So future-proofing the law to make sure that citizens and the village have fair and equal protection, whether it's zoning or whether it's a law, I just think is a good general best practice.
And you're overlapping two different things, okay? You're overlapping a local law with the zoning law in the situation that you're citing. So you need to understand that this is a different type of document.
Well, when the zoning and code enforcement officer is doing both types of enforcement duties, I feel like they're linked issues.
Well, they're not in that situation, they're not.
Well, we mentioned the animal control law
So.
and the zoning issues related to it, so, I mean, can you see my concern? Or am I just being not clear?
You're welcome to express your opinion. All right, any other comments? Any written comments that have come in? All right, and we will close the public hearing for the proposed zoning law and zoning law. Okay, at this point, as Courtney sent out the email, if anyone on the board has a comment or you would like to make a motion, one way or the other, for one of these proposed laws, either the amendment to the animal law or the zoning law, you could do so at this time.
I would like to make a motion for the zoning law. I will be very honest that I hate zoning. I think most people in this room know that. But through this process and seeing things that have gone on, I found, like, even though I think that zoning, it goes against everything in my being as an American, I think that we need to compromise on different things, and I see a lot of good in the new zoning law, and there's a lot of things that I don't like, but I think that I need to be able to compromise on some different things. And so I would like to put forward a motion to pass the zoning law.
Thank you, Emily. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried. Thank you. Anyone care to make a motion on the amendment for the animal control law?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a typo in that? The second, the purpose?
I spelled one already.
I saw that, I checked a lot. No, but the no to proceed, should it be not to proceed, or is that
Yes,
just like
not
a
to
weird
proceed.
language? Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. And until our next meeting, which is the 10th of November, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.